apologies for the late upload. No, I'm not hungover, by the way. What I wanted to do was having been to the game yesterday, I wanted to sort of absorb, I think, some of the post-match reaction, watch the highlights, and just really get a grip of what the reaction was, because often you'll find the reaction in and around the stadium can be very different to the reaction that there might have been at home, and also it's not totally reflective when you're in the ground, particularly at that ground and where I sit, 'cause it's so far from the action. If something happens at the other end of the pitch, it's not immediately evident what's happened. And not just that, I don't think whoever's in charge of the screens, I don't think they do a particularly good job, or maybe they're not allowed to run highlights of certain things. So you don't immediately, if you look to the screen for clarification, confirmation of what's just happened, it's often not up there. So I wanted to go and watch the highlights today and listen to the post-match interview, and I've got to say, David Moyes is not happy at all. I mean, he really didn't want to do that interview for BT, and what I'm talking about, that much is clear. It was a frustrating game to watch, frustrating game to be at. I didn't feel that West Ham were necessarily better because we'd had a rest. So David Moyes did all the rest against Chelsea. I didn't feel like we saw the benefit of that. I didn't think that the team were fizzing. I didn't think they had more energy about them or anything like that. It appeared to be us not playing particularly well. The defending was atrocious, by the way, and I think I brought that on myself because I was sort of having a laugh at Man City and Real Madrid's defending when I watched that game. Excellent game, by the way. Well, ours was certainly no better in that game. We'll get to that in a bit more detail in just a second. But I think Frankfurt are very beatable. I think we can still do this. It's far from over. We've got to play better than that. I think the most important thing is David Moyes knows we've got to play better than that. I felt very much in his interview a few things had come home to roost that were quite obvious, and particularly he was talking about our lack of quality up front. I didn't hear him mention a defending, to be honest, which I did think was the worst bit. I think there's quite small margins up front, particularly when Bowens hit the post and the bar, and Ben Rama went close. I think, they're quite small margins. I think the defending was with big margins. I think there were big gaming gaps in the defence, and there's certainly a problem with the guy that plays on the right wing for them, who, well, let's be fair, he had an awful lot of joy in that game, really, didn't he? The start was weird, okay, because they started really early. And without wishing to pick on too many individuals, it's hard to not assess that. It's hard to assess that first goal that we conceded and not pick out Fornals. He went to sleep. Look, Fornals gets a lot of a leeway in my book, and I'll tell you why. Because I often accept if he's not technically had the best game, if he's not made the key pass at a certain time, or he's fluffed a chance in front of goal, I sort of don't mind. I sort of let him off. Why? Well, because he's got such high energy rates, and it's the other parts of the game. But I always say David Moyes knows what he's going to get from Pablo Fornals. I think what we saw last night is not something that I'm happy to accept from him at all. That's very unlike Pablo to do that, really, to not follow his guy. I thought it was, again, this is what I mean. I thought it was lazy. I thought it lacked the sort of sharpness to it, and it wasn't good at all. What was weird, though, and here's what was weird. So all the Frankfurt fans were there, and it wasn't, I didn't feel that the whole ground had been sort of punctuated with Frankfurt fans. There was loads of them in their section. They made a load of noise. They were really raucous. They brought flares in and all the rest of it. But they were just very much in their section. So obviously when they scored, they celebrated. You'd understand that. There was sort of a silence from West Ham. Then after about 60 seconds, once West Ham had got over the shock of conceding the goal, we all got loud. We started singing. We realised that, I felt collectively as a stadium, we realised that they had noisy fans, so we had to try and counter them. So we started singing. Even though we were gutted to go a goal down, I felt we really tried to lift the players. And I felt as a fan base and as a stadium, we spent the next 5-10 minutes trying to lift those players. But I didn't feel there was an awful lot coming back. I wanted at that point for West Ham to do something, to give us something to get behind, give us something to cheer about. But I did think it was a little bit, I just think we lacked any sort of intensity at at times. Not everyone, by the way. Far from. I think there were times when Antonio was really attempting to get behind them, and Bowen was certainly joining on the attack. But too often during that game, I felt we had two attackers, and it's not because other players weren't given a licence to attack. They really were, but it just felt. It didn't feel like Fornals was an attacking force, and he's a big part of that team. It didn't feel like Lanzini was an attacking force, but he's a big part of that team. Don't get me wrong, look, the free kick that Lanzini put over, Zuma headed it, Antonio's goal, good free kick, don't get me wrong. But I just thought it was almost something was going to come from Antonio or Bowen, or no one else at all. And if you're going to, not that we sat back, but if you're going to have only really two players looking to have a cutting edge and be effective, then you better be bloody good at the back, and we weren't. Just want to get to a couple of things in just a second. Before I do, this video is sponsored by the OneFootball app, which you can download by clicking on that link below or using that QR code just up there. The OneFootball app is free. You download it to your mobile device, it'll ask you who you support. So you say, I support West Ham, and what it'll do, put all the West Ham news into one place for you. It'll give you all the player ratings from Frankfurt. It'll give you a rundown of everything you need to know ahead of the next fixture. It'll tell you everything you need to know ahead of the Arsenal game. Anything to do with West Ham, be it injuries, transfer news, gossip, it's all there in one place. It's free. Use the link below. That's the OneFootball app. So there was this weird thing going on, I felt, in the stadium. The stadium was also, and I'm not blaming the stadium for us losing the game. The team are the reason we lost the game. Don't get me wrong. And I don't think that, by the way, as I mentioned earlier, Frankfurt are unbeatable. I just want to get this right. When I looked at Real Madrid, and I looked at City and Liverpool and Villarreal and teams like that, I looked at them, and don't get me wrong, we've beaten both City and Liverpool this season, but I did look at them in the final stages of the Champions League and think these teams are a level above. But I don't think Frankfurt are. I don't think Frankfurt are one of the best teams in Europe. And had things gone a different way, then look, if our balls hit the back of the net, if you pardon the expression, and our defending's better, we win the game, we can win in Frankfurt, and I think we probably will. That being said, I think the stadium was a little bit weird. So there's a couple of little gripes I've got here, and it's a way that you can see that the stadium doesn't belong to the club. I don't particularly want to overly dig out somebody that's on minimum wage here, but just the thing when it goes out to the ball boys, they don't seem to have a reading of the situation a lot of the time. At a time when we want to almost slow it down and get back into position, they're throwing the ball back to Frankfurt as quickly as they throw it back to us. It's almost like it's too fair. Do you know what I mean? It's and I don't know why that happens, but there's definitely something going on there, really. And there were just times when I thought we needed the ball quickly, and where is it? No, it's just taking too long. I know there's big distance between the stands and the rest of it, but I'm talking about when they've got the ball into hand. It's I don't feel there's any home advantage. That's what I'm saying, right? The other thing that was evident as well was when they were setting off the flares and all the rest of it. And but I don't know how you get a flare into a ground anyway. Quite frankly, it's a bit of a worry. If you can get a flare into a ground, you get all manner of things into a ground. So anyway, it seems to be happening more and more, doesn't it? But what was evident was they were doubling up. All the stewards were doubling up on the West Ham fans. So, and there was one point where it didn't look like the flares were being dealt with at all. And there was like a group of stewards almost stood around thinking, okay, what should we do? There was some people in red coats, or what should we do about that? But at the same time, they managed to put a whole bank of stewards basically all facing the West Ham fans, and then they doubled up on them. More stewards started coming down. I think, oh look, just come on, whose stadium is this? And look, I wasn't over that part of the stadium. It didn't look like there was any violence over there. I guess if there was, we'd have heard about it. But you just think, come on, it's our stadium, and I just felt last night the fans really did their job. And look, the stadium is full of claret and blue, and there's West Hamified everywhere, and all the rest of it. But sometimes it's not just putting some crossed hammers up and making it all claret and blue that makes it a home stadium. Sometimes in terms of the staffing in the stadium, you've got to almost make it feel a little bit hostile to the away fans and a little bit more welcoming to the home fans. I just found it really, really weird. Anyway, look, there were some issues with the team. I thought Declan Rice played really, really well. I thought Bowen, again, looked sharp. He was unlucky. Antonio got his goal. Antonio was always looking to get in behind. I think in many respects, whilst whilst he didn't look in tip-top form, I thought Antonio was probably the one player that looked like he had a rest. He was trying. He got his goal. But I also felt it was evident at times during that he wasn't a striker. And for David Moyes to come out afterwards, and it was a real spiky little bit in the interview, actually. So the interviewer asked him, she said, "Oh, are you pleased with Mickey to get back on his... get back on the goal trail? You pleased Mickey scored a goal?" Something like that. And he sort of stopped and he paused and said... And he went like this, he went, "Yeah, I'm pleased for Mickey." You feel, okay, well, it's always interesting what's not being said there. And then he went on to say we lack quality up front and all the rest of it. Well, we do know this. And it is frustrating. It's frustrating for us all. But, ultimately, I know I will praise Moyes for everything, and I always do. And he's the reason we're in the semi-final. But ultimately, the reason we sort of lack any quality up front is because... we sold Sebastian Haller a long time ago. And it's two reasons. Number one, he couldn't find a way to incorporate Sebastian Haller in the team, who does have quality up front because of the tactics. And okay, that's fine. But he clearly is a very good striker. And then what he's done is he's taken him over 18 months to replace Sebastian Haller, and he still hasn't done so. So it really can be no surprise there. Anyway, Antonio got his goal, what Bowen did. I just felt we needed one or two others in there to provide a threat. I mean, it's not happening for Souček at the moment. It's just not. I mean, that boy really... We talk about players getting a rest. As I said, I didn't feel any benefit of a rest. But if there's one person that probably does, it is Souček. And if he is, David Moyes is going to make another round of changes ahead of the next game against Arsenal, then I certainly feel if one of the players is going to be rested, it needs to be Souček. We need to try and get a tune out of him in some way, shape or form. I thought he was defensively brilliant against Chelsea, Souček. I thought he really, really was. But I think we need something more than that now, even if it's just for this little run-in. Whilst it looks like the goals are drying up a little bit, we really need to find a way to get Souček into goal-scoring positions. Or if not, find a different way, find a different formation, just find something. It doesn't look like Moyes will ever drop him, but I think he probably needs to ahead of the Arsenal game. Few things to sort out ahead of the second leg against Frankfurt. I would suggest, Cresswell's going to need some help. He really is. As if he goes in with that formation again. I don't know about you, I felt we looked more defensively sound actually with the makeshift defence against Chelsea, funny enough, than we did with Zuma and Dawson back. I mean, I listened to the commentators purring about Frankfurt's second goal. And look, they strung some nice passes together, but my word, there were massive gaps in our defence. Massive gaps. And I'll say the first goal was awful. And I know they hit the post afterwards, but I did think we really gave them massive chances, which you really shouldn't be doing. And that's the only thing with David Moyes. For all his talk about the attack and the lack of quality in the attacking third that he was speaking about, I really hope he goes back and spends the next week and he looks and addresses what is clearly a problem with the defence. Because I'll tell you now, if that is not addressed, we won't go through to the final. If he addresses the problem in defence, then I'm pretty sure that we can go to Frankfurt, get at least a win. I guess 1-0 will then take it to extra time and all the rest of it. I don't know. I think there's a lot to play out in this tie yet. I'm certainly not writing off all chances of getting to the final.